Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we're taking a look at Andy Weir's Project Hail Mary, a book that's got everyone talking, especially sci-fi fans. We're going to break it all down so you can decide, is this the next book for your TBR pile or not? We've got a ton of Goodreads reviews from readers, some info about Andy Weir himself, and even an in-depth analysis from the bibliophile.
Well, let's jump right into it. Project Hail Mary, gotta say, it's a pretty big hit with readers. We're talking 4.5 stars on Goodreads with nearly 700,000 reviews. So if you are into that hard sci-fi, but like with a bit of humor mixed in, you're gonna want to check this one out.
Wow, those are some seriously impressive numbers. But I've got to say, I keep hearing that it's kind of like The Martian, just like in space.
Yeah,
So is it really that original? Is there something new here?
I can see where you're coming from. There are definitely some similarities, right? You've got that lone astronaut who's, got to problem solve their way out of crazy situations.
Mhm.
Weir's humor is definitely there, and he's really good at explaining like complicated science stuff in a way that, even I can understand. But Project Hail Mary, it really goes way bigger. Think like interstellar travel, aliens, and oh yeah, the fate of like multiple planets is at stake.
Okay, so we're not just talking about potatoes on Mars this time. We're upping the stakes a bit.
Yeah.
But what about this alien encounter you mentioned? That's going to be pretty wild, right?
Wild doesn't even begin to cover it. Okay, so imagine this. A dog-sized spider covered in rocks with sonar vision who communicates through music.
Wait, hold on. A rock spider. That's our alien.
Yep, that's Rocky. And get this, he's not just some random, side character. Rocky is actually crucial to like the whole mission. And a lot of readers like really get attached to him. Thorny even mentioned in their review how they were like fully invested in Rocky's story. It's a really interesting dynamic.
Okay, I'm intrigued, but I got to ask, how much science am I going to have to wade through here? I'm no astrophysicist.
Don't worry, you don't need a PhD to enjoy this book. Weir like really breaks things down. He uses humor, analogies, stuff like that. But fair warning, there is a lot of science. I mean, even some hardcore fans admitted that some parts, like the velocity calculations, were a bit much. Even Carol mentioned in her review how she kind of struggled with all the physics at times.
So it's not exactly a light beach read then? But another thing I've heard is that the characters are kind of, well, flat. Like they're just science textbook stereotypes.
Yeah, that's a valid point. Ryland Grace, our main guy, he does have some similarities to Mark Watney from The Martian, like super witty, resourceful, maybe a little too perfect. Julian Wonderland even said in her review that he was like Mark Watney in space. So yeah, not totally original. But here's the thing, there's a twist.
Okay, now you've got my attention. A twist. What kind of twist?
So basically, Raylan was tricked into this whole mission. He wakes up, no memory, on a spaceship, no clue how he got there or what he's supposed to be doing. Amnesia in space.
Whoa, okay, that's definitely a game changer. Being tricked into, what, a potential suicide mission? Yeah, that's got to mess with your head, right?
Exactly. And reviewer Kaylee brought up a really good point about the like ethics of it all. Like, is it okay to do that to someone, even if it's to save humanity?
Heavy stuff. So it's not all just fun and games with a rock spider sidekick then?
Definitely not. There are some pretty big themes at play here. Trust, sacrifice, the weight of like saving not one but two planets. It's a big step up from just like surviving on Mars, right?
That's making me think about Weir's other books. How does this one compare, especially to Artemis, which I know got some mixed reactions?
That's a good point. And it reminds me of what Mario the Lone Bookwolf said. He pointed out that Weir doesn't just write like one type of sci-fi. Project Hail Mary and The Martian were kind of similar, right? Humorous, lots of tech talk, survival against all odds. But Artemis was different, more gritty, more crime-focused. Maybe that's why it didn't land as well with some readers.
Interesting. So if you love The Martian, you'll probably love Project Hail Mary. But what about people who want something, different, more about the characters, or maybe exploring some deeper philosophical ideas? Would they still enjoy it?
That's where things get a little tricky. Like, yeah, the book touches on ethics, identity, talking to aliens. But the main focus is definitely still the science and the mission itself. The characters, while they're likable, they're not as, deeply developed as you might find in other sci-fi books.
So we've got this awesome alien, Rocky, tons of science, a protagonist who's basically been tricked into saving the world. Where does all this lead? What are the stakes here?
Well, remember those multiple planets we talked about? Yeah, the stakes are pretty high. It's not just Earth that's in trouble. It's also Arid, which is like Rocky's home planet.
So double the danger, huh?
Pretty much. Ryland and Rocky are in a race against time to, figure out a solution and stop a total galactic catastrophe. It's a real page-turner.
Okay, now I'm really hooked. But let's take a step back and talk about those who might still be on the fence. What are some of the criticisms, the things that might not work for everyone?
One thing that comes up a lot, we kind of touched on it earlier, is that some characters just aren't that deep. I mean, Ryland is fun, relatable, but sometimes he can feel a bit like, the stereotypical genius scientist, a little over the top. Some readers might want more emotional depth, especially if they're really into character-driven stories. And then there's like the science. There's a lot of it. Weir does a great job explaining it, but, sometimes it takes over and the story can feel a bit like slow. So if you're not super into all the technical stuff or you prefer your sci-fi a bit lighter, this one might not be for you.
Yeah, that makes sense. It sounds like you really have to be in the mood for some serious sci-fi to get the most out of this book.
Definitely. You can't just skim this one. You got to be ready to put in the brain power.
But for those who are up for the challenge, it seems like it could be really rewarding. You mentioned earlier that ending is surprisingly emotional. What is it about Project Hail Mary that gets people so emotional? I mean, several reviewers mentioned tears, bittersweetness. What is it that contributes to that?
Well, a big part of it is the relationship between Ryland and Rocky. Remember, they're both facing, the end of their species. So there's this really powerful sense of camaraderie, a shared purpose. And their journey is not easy. They got to make tough choices that have, huge consequences, not just for them, but for their entire planets.
Yeah.
And the ending, it's not your typical happy ending. It's more, complicated, thought-provoking. It leaves you with this feeling of hope, but also a bit of sadness.
Wow, that sounds really powerful. It's amazing how Weir can take all this science and problem solving and still make it so emotional.
He's really good at that. Even with all the, fantastical stuff, he never forgets about the human element, the things that we all connect with, Even Lufer, she said in her review that she actually found Project Hail Mary even more emotional than The Martian, which is saying something.
That's really interesting. What do you think makes this one more emotional then?
I think Rocky has a lot to do with it. Having that non-human companion, someone to share your fears and hopes with, it adds a whole other level of depth. The Martian was all about, one guy's survival. But this is different. It's about connection. Two totally different beings working together against all odds. I think that really resonates with people.
Yeah, totally. There's something really special about the idea of connecting with an alien, especially one as, well, unique as Rocky. Now, you mentioned earlier that the book leaves some questions unanswered, especially about the other star systems that are affected by this same threat. Is that something Weir actually talks about, or is it more left up to the reader's imagination?
Yeah, it's definitely more of a lingering question. The main focus is on saving Earth and Arid, Rocky's planet, but the fact that there are all these other star systems out there facing the same thing, it's always in the background. It's a subtle way of reminding you that the stakes are even bigger than you think.
That's such a cool way to end the story. Makes you wonder, what else is out there, what other stories are happening.
Exactly. It really opens up your mind to the vastness of the universe, the possibility that we're not alone in this. It really gets you thinking.
That's what I love about good sci-fi. It makes you question everything. So for our listeners who are trying to decide if they should pick up Project Hail Mary, what's the final verdict? What are the key takeaways here?
Okay, so if you love hard sci-fi, if you enjoyed Weir's style in The Martian, and if you're looking for a story with high stakes and an ending that will stay with you, then Project Hail Mary is definitely worth checking out.
But if you're more into character-driven stories or you prefer your sci-fi a bit less technical, then this one might not be the best fit.
Right. It's all about knowing what you're looking for, This book demands your attention. It makes you think.
That's super helpful. It sounds like Project Hail Mary is an amazing book for the right person, but it's not for everyone. And that's okay. The important thing is finding books that speak to you.
Absolutely. And that's what we try to do here on the Deep Dive, give you all the info you need to make those decisions.
We've covered a lot today. I think our listeners have a pretty good idea now of what Project Hail Mary is all about.
Yeah.
And before we wrap up, a huge thank you to everyone for listening and joining us on this journey.
And we want to hear from you. Have you read the book? What did you think? Did you love Rocky as much as we did? Tell us everything. Your favorite parts, your questions, anything.
And if Project Hail Mary doesn't sound like your thing, no worries.
Yeah.
There are tons of other great books out there waiting to be discovered. So go explore, keep reading, and keep those TBR piles growing.
It's been really fun, getting to dive into this book with you. It's amazing how a story about like science and space can also make you think about, what it means to be human.
Absolutely. And that's what makes Project Hail Mary so special. It's not just an adventure. It's about connection,
Mhm.
about working together and never giving up, even when things seem impossible.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I think we've given our listeners a pretty good look at Project Hail Mary. So if you're looking for a book that will, make you think, that's got all that cool science stuff, and that will leave you with a feeling of hope, well, this might be the one for you.
Definitely.
But like we said, it's not for everyone. If you're more into, character-driven stories or you want something a little lighter, there are tons of other great books out there. The important thing is to find what you love.
Couldn't agree more.
And hey, that's what the deep dive is all about.
Right.
We do the deep dive so you don't have to. You can decide what's worth your time.
Exactly.
So that's it for today. A huge thank you to all of our listeners for joining us. We really appreciate you.
And don't forget to let us know what you think. Have you read Project Hail Mary? Did you love Rocky? Tell us everything.
And if you haven't read it yet, well, get out there and explore. There's a whole world of amazing books waiting for you. Happy
Yeah.
reading, everyone.